Wonderful. Okay, so we're all sorted. Record has happened, so we can get rid of that piece of paper. See, I have Connor and Amy, Alex, keep an eye on me. So lovely to be here with you tonight, and really looking forward to where the conversation goes. So do a little introduction to everybody, just to welcome to Caroline's Corner. And the intention, which hasn't changed and remains the same, is to create a safe place for conversations, and specifically for people who want to find meaning in their lives and in life itself, and to share it. Let it just go wherever it needs to go, and the people that are meant to hear it. So I'm really, really looking forward to our conversation, Alex. Thank you so much for coming into Caroline's Corner.
Wow. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, brilliant. And I suppose, and I just chatted with you there, I have an email that I sent to you, Alex. It was, I have the date here, and I'm going to read it out, if that's okay. And that's sort of where our friendship started and where I reached out to you. And I knew I was too, and it felt right. So I'm going to read it and just let us take it from there. Is that all right?
Sure.
Thank you so much. Okay, so it's the 24th of July, 2021. And I just said, good morning, Alex. It's 8:30 a.m. in Ireland, and I'm sitting listening to the introductory course with your good self, Pam, and your grandfather's audios and videos. Firstly, thank you for bringing me to this moment. I'm a firm believer in synchronicity. I don't want to overload my life experiences, but I do have an ask. Would it be possible to have a Zoom meeting with your good self to talk about my decision to include logotherapy in my life purpose? Alex, I have and I am a psychotherapist for the last 20 years, and also a tutor for many years in Ireland for the Foundation in Therapy courses. I also was a founder and CEO of an organisation for over 20 years, specifically working in suicide prevention, mental health, and I worked with Amnesty for a number of years, focusing on people being the driver of their own recovery, as opposed to it being directive and clinical intervention with the belief that we know best, and prescribed drugs being used at a horrific level for so many people. I've written some beautiful programs that continue and are unique in their viewpoint. I've also many years ago been a patient of the psych services in Ireland and can talk from experience, and have always. I've challenged our systems and also over time worked with them. All of this was with the support and love of my wonderful soulmate and husband, John. A man who is steadfast, solid, very soulful, and got life in that we have a birth date and a death date. And who also woke up every morning and said hello to the day. My heart is racing as I read this. And felt blessed when he got to say goodbye to the day. He went from the motor trade for years to becoming an acupuncturist, to becoming a mental health tutor, all of which he took in his stride. He was the person who held the door open for others and never needed to be upfront, and seen my potential, and always said I was an enigma, and encouraged me every single step of the way. Our adult children, Connor and Amy, have been brought up in a home that has been open to all of life, and little did I know that this was so imperative to our lives now. John and myself have always thanked them both for picking us as their parents. I use conventional and Ayurveda doctors and practice TM, hemisync, and other meditations. On the 21st of July 2019, 48 hours after we were on a family holiday in Malaga and in a pub, a stranger who had said hello to my friend and myself briefly during the night, and we carried on about our business. As John went to the bathroom, he came in with broken bottles and murdered my husband. John managed to get back out to me and collapsed in the middle of screaming in terror, which does not have any words. The paramedics could not believe he got to me. I did, as John would move mountains for me. He was on the ground and bled to death in my arms, as his eyes and mine kept looking at each other. And in the beginning, I was screaming at him, and then I knew something much bigger then me stepped in, and I spoke in a way that was so beyond the moment and so much more about John and me. What continued for the rest of that night and days is beyond words in any email. I know he's with me. I can feel John right by my side. He always is. The organisation I founded with John took over 1 year to untangle myself from, which was horrific, due to people who were around me for years having agendas and making decisions that are no longer my business, but part of their journey on this earth. Alongside John's death, trials in Spain, and 18 months after John died, the man who murdered him realised he was going down for life and chose to kill himself. I also have disengaged with the world of therapy, and I've been very adamant that there's a lot of nonsense and egos involved, which I would have thought before anyway, and so did John. I have kept my accreditation for some reason, but I'm not sure why. Many years ago, John and myself read your grandfather's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and took what we were meant to at that time. About 12 months ago, I done a course online with Fran Grace, our beautiful mutual friend, and read and have fallen in love with her book, The Power of Love. And I get to meet your grandfather again, and now your good self, Alex. There are no coincidences. This is the first time since John has died that I've thought maybe I would work as a therapist again. And as I listen to your experience and how your grandfather seen the relationships as equal, I feel an energy and an excitement, which is very rare since John was murdered. But I know John, life, and my higher self is guiding me, and I trust each and all of them. Alex, thank you for taking the time to listen to some of my life. And I'd appreciate if we could have a chat, as it would mean a lot to explore, adding to my life's purpose, your grandfather's work and yours. Take care, Caroline. That was the 24th of July, 2021. Thanks, Alex. And we're still chatting.
Here we are, yes.
Oh, thank you. And for me, I felt you're the person that I could share and talk about my husband, because how he left this earth is only part of, but it's pretty horrific. And your grandfather and now yourself, I would have always, and John, we would have had that outlook in life of how, in spite of or despite, but that's all right until something comes so brutal and you just don't know. So for me to talk about the work you're doing, your grandfather, Viktor Frankl, it would be just such a blessing tonight for me, Alex.
Yeah, well, thank you again for the trust in me. And I can't possibly imagine what you have gone through and what you continue to go through every time you recall this horrific this tragedy. And yeah, when it comes to understanding, I don't think it's possible, humanly possible, to ever understand why such things happen in the world, why people do what they do to each other, and why, at least it seems, always the people who seem to be the most valuable and contribute so much to the world and their families and the loved ones seem to be the first to go.
Thank you.
And sometimes that's would be a good reason to become bitter and resentful.
Mm-hmm.
There will be no judgment for anybody who would. So yeah, here we are. And,
we are.
you've chosen not to become bitter and resentful.
Well, I have rage and anger, and I can throw and let loose. Yeah, I can.
Well, that's not your choice.
Yeah, true.
Our feelings are not our choices, but what we do with them
is.
And I think what you do with them, or what you decide to do with them every day, is beautiful and is helpful to others. And I congratulate you for that.
And I think one of the things that had to happen when I came home, because I felt I had no skin, and I just kept going, if I have no skin, how am I going to stay together? And I just said to John, you better guide me to people here, and people gone ahead. And that's how Viktor, your grandfather, came in. And I knew to just keep listening. I didn't even know how much or what, because my brain was on fire, and tsunami after tsunami. And I just kept saying to John, guide me. And like that, I ended up going and chatting with yourselves, but also the online. That's where I started with Pam and yourself in the Institute in America, which is a beautiful, I mean, you might like to share it. I just felt I was brought into your grandfather Viktor's life, and also your relationship with your grandfather, and just going, even the video of going into his apartment. I just felt, God, I feel I'm being drawn to someone here. And it was really, really beautiful. In the tragedy, I found that really beautiful. And there was a feeling of comfort when I was sitting and listening to the course. I don't know, would you call it a course? What do you call it?
Yeah, it's a course.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to say? Yeah.
An introductory course.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's what's interesting about my grandfather and his work was I think he had a very deep understanding for what it means to be human, the whole range of experiences that entails. And for example, he would say suffering, unavoidable suffering like you've experienced, is part of life. We all experience suffering in some shape or form. And if we assume, which is an assumption ultimately, that there is such a thing as meaning to life and to our existence and to the existence of the universe, then there must be potentially some meaning in suffering, because suffering is always a part of life. Everybody suffers.
Yeah. Some
people suffer gravely, like you have. Other people have lives that are relatively easy in comparison.
Yeah.
It's not fair. We don't know why. Sort of like in school, you could compare it to that. Teachers asking questions, is doing a test, and it goes around asking the pupils, students, questions, and some get easy questions and some get really hard questions. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, what if we stick to the school analogy, what matters is not the questions. They're not being judged.
No.
But what's being judged is the answers that the students give. And they are being judged by their answers, how they choose to answer. And this is what my grandfather emphasized when he always said, maybe it's not us. It's not up to us always to decide and to demand, this is the kind of life I want, and this is what I want out of life. Well, you can do that, and it might work out. But many times it doesn't, or it turns out differently. If you think of that saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans.
Yeah, I know.
And so it's a good way to end up in frustration if you go in with this demand attitude. And so he said, why don't you turn this around and look at it this way? Life is really asking you the questions, or us, but it's up to us. It's up to each individual to choose the way that we respond. That is up to us. We're completely free to decide how we respond to a situation, how we respond to, for example, being confronted with murder. Right? This is not something you chose to experience.
Jesus Christ, no.
And how do you respond? There's so many ways you could have responded, and you still
I
can't
probably
respond.
have. I probably tried.
Grave injustice that has happened to you.
Yeah.
You could have taken that bottle and killed that guy.
I had to go.
A
I had to
response,
go.
right?
Yeah.
Understandable. You'd say,
Yeah.
okay. But then, if you think of it on an existential level, this person who murdered your husband is and was for the rest of his life a murderer.
Yeah.
That can never be expunged. It cannot be undone.
Nope.
In the end, he took his own life.
Mm-hmm.
So, a double murder, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to define his life.
Yeah.
How much influence did he have on the life of your husband or the life of you? Did he turn your husband into a murderer?
No.
Did he have the power to turn you into a murderer?
No.
So you continue to live. You're forced to continue to live, but you also choose to continue to live.
Mm-hmm.
And to be a person has been a victim of this circumstance, who has been asked a very, very challenging question by life. But you choose to respond in your way, and you respond by doing something with this tragedy that cannot be undone.
No.
But you take this and you move forward in a different direction than you did before, maybe even in a more meaningful direction than you did before. And you choose to not become somebody who puts a lot of negative things into the world because of what happened to you. But instead, you turn this tragedy, you turn this minus into a plus for the people who benefit from from meeting you, from being in therapy, from listening to your podcast. And that is your choice. So it is something that's uniquely up to us humans. We are not defined by what happens to us, but we are defining ourselves every day by what we choose to put into this world. And again, I congratulate you. And just like my grandfather, who also experienced a lot of injustice.
Wow. I was thinking, sorry, go on.
And also, he would have been justified in continuing the rest of his life as a bitter man, or even as somebody who's hurting others. There's the saying, hurt people hurt, right?
Yeah, yeah.
As if that was a law, as if people couldn't do different. Now, I'm not judging anybody who reacts that way. We're not here to judge.
Not
right?
at all. No.
Perfectly understandable. But to say that somebody who witnessed or received some grave injustice or was traumatized, was a victim, to say that that person has no other choice to then become this and that, a bitter person, a hurtful person, a person who seeks revenge and then does injustice to others. It's not that simple.
No. And for people, if it's okay, and are you okay with you just will back and forward in the pace? Just
sure, yeah.
Thanks, Alex. And it's with your grandfather, with Viktor Frankl, if people were listening and maybe hadn't or didn't just sort of your grandfather, he's so much more of everything. I'm very conscious of, like me, I don't want to be put in, I don't want John to be put in, it's like how John left this earth physically. He is so much more than, and that's something I know by talking this narrative that we're all more than. But just even around your grandfather, and because I was thinking afterwards, for me, for a few years, I had to push the whole world away because I just thought I'm not going to survive this physically. And just for your grandfather, what he went through, and then came out of a concentration camp, and like he found a way after such terror to bring so much love into this world.
And he wasn't the only one.
No,
he would reject that thought of, oh, there was something special about him.
no, I agree.
He
Yeah,
would completely reject that. So
yeah.
everybody can do that. It's our choice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean he was free of the pain.
No,
It's not about how to overcome your suffering and feel good
no,
again. Not
no,
about that. It goes way beyond that. You
totally.
can live a meaningful life and you can contribute meaningfully to this world, and you can put a lot of love into this world and help others despite what happened to
Yeah,
you, or even because
yeah.
of what happened to you. And this is why I always criticize this kind of kitchen psychology that goes back to Freud, unfortunately, and that we so readily accept. I mean, every time you open the newspaper,
I
like just last month, somebody went into the supermarket and shot a couple of people, and then in front of the judge, he said, "Well, he was just frustrated with his life, and he never received much love." And that was kind of reported as if, well, clearly, then he had to go into a supermarket and shoot people. What else?
Yeah,
This reductionistic idea of the human being as a black box, and you put a negative in, out comes a negative. None of this has ever been proven to be the case. We just don't hear about the many, many cases of people who've come from tragedy, come from broken homes, who had terrible childhood experiences.
absolutely.
And yet they live healthy lives. And despite of that, and sometimes even because of that, because they say, I know what it feels like to not be wanted, to not receive some love. And that's exactly why I'm going to not do that to the people that I care about. That's why I'm going to do the opposite. And that's something that we have to remind ourselves sometimes, that all the possibilities are open. And we are not defined, we're not determined. This idea of determinism, a bad childhood, some trauma has to have some effect, and that person has to get on the wrong path. That is unacceptable, and it is dehumanizing. Now, even if we say, okay, we kind of get the idea of the pain that this person experienced, and we empathize with that, absolutely. And we wish nobody a bad childhood. We wish nobody a traumatic experience. But it's dehumanizing to say a person couldn't do any different because of that experience. Because then you take away their capacity for their own decisions, and you take away that which makes us human, this capacity to make our own decisions. So you take away more than, even if your intentions are good, you take away the very essence of what makes us human. There was a great philosopher, Jaspers, who once said, every criminal has the right to be punished. And what did he mean by that? Exactly that. If we say, oh, anybody who's become a criminal is just a poor victim of circumstances, of upbringing, of society, all the influences, all the conditions that might not have been ideal or even bad, and that we should definitely try to improve as a society. But to say, because of those circumstances, that person couldn't help him or herself and to become what they became, then we dehumanize. And it turns out that even if you talk people, and my grandfather talked to people on death row, there was still executions being done at St. Quentin prison, and he went there and he basically said that. He said, you have the freedom to make choices, and you made some very meaningless choices, and you got caught, and that's why you're here. And that also doesn't take away, I'm not here to explain that away. No. I don't want to explain away your humanity. Not that I even could do that, because in your conscience, in your heart of hearts, you know very well that you could have done different and didn't. But even that doesn't take away fully the possibility to still grow as human beings, to make new decisions now, as long as you live, even if it's only days. You can still choose, and you still, until we die, we decide who we want to be, who we are. We can make those choices, even if we can't control our surroundings, even if we can't make any choices that make a difference in the world, so to speak.
Yeah.
We can still change ourselves, and we can still change our attitude, and we can grow beyond. We can take a distance to say even the things that we did and that we now regret. And on some level, even a murderer, even a murderer who truly regrets what they did is in essence, on an existential level, no longer a murderer. But this doesn't take away the responsibility that they still have and always will have for what they have done. And that's another part of life that so often makes it difficult for people to live, and even more difficult to die. The factor of guilt, the phenomenon of guilt, which is also something that we cannot avoid. It's part of being human. We all become guilty in some instance, sooner or later, through something that we did or for something that we should have done and didn't do. There might be minor things, but still, it's always a comparison within your own life. And our conscience knows that very well. And even if people tell us, "Oh, you couldn't do any different," well, oftentimes that's not really true, and we know it. And still, with death, suffering, and with guilt, my grandfather called this the tragic triad.
He did, didn't he? I know. I've been reading books for the last 18 months.
You have. I'm not.
I'm exhausted. Two things. No, listen. Unfortunately, you're not going to get rid of me. I'm on a mission to share the. And I think you said it to me before, Alex. It's not about me learning. It's about, your grandfather would say, well, you're living the philosophy that he embraced, and I know that. So I just want to be part of that. I don't want to get that movement, but part of that around logotherapy and, the fullness of who we are, and to be part of talking, having these conversations, sharing. And again, it's a choice. Two things that really struck me there. When you were talking about Viktor, about your grandfather, when John came home, it's pretty horrific, We came home on a Tuesday, and then John came home on the Thursday. And the undertakers were in the house. And I remember, and this is just when you were chatting there, the guy was gone, and I said, "It's nice to meet you." He said, "It's not really, because when you meet me, someone's died." And I said, "Well, actually, no, you're quite a nice person." And I could barely breathe at this stage, and I could barely talk. And I was like, get everybody away from me, because everything was shaking inside. And he said, "Could I say something?" And I said, "Absolutely." He said, "I bury people every day." He said, "I bury a lot of people every day for many, many years." And he said, "What has happened here is beyond tragic." He said, "It's just devastating." And he said, "And I don't know, John, I don't know your husband, but I'm around you and the family as we prepare, for the funeral." And he said, "My God, did he live his life?" And I said, "You just got my husband." I said, "You just got my husband." He said, "I'm listening to people, I'm hearing you." I have his picture there looking at me. And he just said, he lived his life and he did. He done all the things you shouldn't do, and he done all the things you should do. And just, you know what I mean? He was the devil at times. And the other thing then, when you were chatting, John's father and me made a deal that if we feel we were going into the abyss, because he lost his wife, he lost his brother and his son within an 8-month period. And John's dad, Sean, is still alive. And I don't have words for it. And we made a deal, we'd have a little chat. And we said to John and Bernda, if we're going into the abyss, we start on each other. Do you know what I mean? It's like we'd say, right, pull us out of this abyss now. Tell us to just keep talking, keep the conversations going, because with death and with a traumatic death, relationships crash all around. But he turned around, and it's so lovely. And he said, "Caroline," he said, "I do look at the roads, and I look at the cement." He said, "The cement on the road." And he said, despite that, and he said, there's nothing. You see these little green shoots, and that's what he always calls little green shoots growing from cement. And I just thought it was so beautiful. And he'd say, "So what we'll hope for you know, not hope. We didn't use the word hope because we couldn't touch that, but we look out for the little green shoots in each one of us, and they will come from cement. They'll come from something that is dead in one way, because part of you dies, and then you have to survive the trauma, as you said about your grandfather and so many other people afterwards. It's so physical. Everything gets just, it's like a tornado. But I just thought that image, and you just see it out on the roads here, where these little green shoots are, and you're going, how did that grow? Because that's shit cement, you know what I mean? But just when you were talking those two things, a man who never met John got it by being around us in the most tragic circumstances. And then John's father, he'd say to me, now we'll just look for the little green shoots, Caroline. And he's in his 80s, and in an 8-month period had lost 3 family members.
Well, it's sometimes, you know, people who understand suffering, they see the world clearer.
They do.
And they see what's relevant. Yeah, the little shoots, and if you think of it, even, you know, your husband in your life, I never met him, but
you'd have liked him.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. And he lived his life. Now, how wonderful to be able to say that about a person, that they did that.
Yeah.
And they did that for many years.
Yeah.
Like, how old was he?
54. I still have him aging with me in my heart. 54 when he physically died. Yeah.
So this wonderful individual lived 54 years.
Yes.
And met you, and you had a love, and you have a love. I don't think it ends
no.
at the grave.
No, it
Clearly
doesn't.
not, otherwise you wouldn't be suffering.
Absolutely.
Started a family, did a lot of things, that countless things that define him.
Yeah.
That define him. It's not what somebody else did to him.
No.
But what he did, that's what counts. That's him, his decisions, the way he chose to live, and the choices that he made.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, how many people live and they, for example, they never find true love.
No.
Or they can't start a family, or, you know, it's the things. My grandfather always said meaning is sort of like oxygen, or maybe that was Elizabeth Lucas who said that, I'm not sure. You know, everything goes well and you don't even notice it's there until it's not. And then you start missing it.
Absolutely.
And it's the same with meaning. We usually don't think much about it, but we need it. And when it's not there, then the pain starts. And I see anybody, not just you, anybody who is mourning for a life that's been cut short.
Yeah.
Where you love that person so much, and were such a good person that you and a lot of people would have wanted that person to live longer.
Absolutely.
It shows you what great gift you've received from life. And
totally. Totally. 34 years. Yeah, I agree.
4 years together. That's wonderful. That's a gift. That's not for granted. And you know that.
I do. I really do.
But sometimes we have that tendency as human beings. Somehow we are hardwired that way. Yeah. To not wake up in the morning and say, I'm so grateful I don't have a toothache today. Yeah. But wait till the morning you wake up with a toothache. There's nothing else to think of, right?
Absolutely.
Many things that we have received that maybe at some point we took for granted. Yeah. Unless, you know, we all tend to do that. And sometimes we were even only aware of what we've lost when it's gone. And luckily, I don't think that was the case with the relationship that two of you had. So you had that, you lived that. It cannot be unlived. It cannot be undone. Never. It's safely stored in the past. It's a reality. Yeah. Nobody can take that away. And because your love is real and it's still real now, that's why you are now suffering. And that's why you're now sad, and that's why you're mourning.
Yeah.
And you will probably always have that. And there's no reason to be in despair about that. That is part of life. And it's that's a comparison by great Elizabeth Lucas, who also lost her husband a couple of years ago. And she said she feels like she's walking, and on her left side there's grief, and on the right side there's gratitude.
Yeah, walking side by side.
Walking side by side.
And I think when you said, for me, the absolute physical trauma and of how John died and being there with him, and yet I thank God he got back out to me when I could. I just, even Connor and Amy said, Mom, you know, just that he wasn't on his own is a we know it's a gift. And one of the things that in the first couple of years, and when it comes now, I get more breaks because I do ask Life and John, can I have peace, as well as, you know, when the tsunamis come, and I can nearly hear him saying, the tsunamis are coming, you're surviving them, and all the others in their different relationships with John. But when the peace comes, Caroline, sit in it. You know, you deserve it. But I remember, and just listening and talking with people that I felt that I could talk to, and I remember thinking, okay, the night that John physically left this earth, his story finished physically. Mine continued. And I keep saying to John, when the tsunamis came, just please help it to integrate into my body, because this is part of my story as well. How you left this earth is part of my life now, and it doesn't need to destroy me. Now, believe you me, for a couple of years, and there's still times I can absolutely, it could be gin, it could be cigars, but there's always a bit of meditation thrown in. It's changing as time goes. I don't really give a shit about that. It's like survival, and this is a zone you're in yourself. But I do know, stepping and saying to John and to Life, even how you left this earth, do not let this destroy me. Do not let it destroy our families and friends, because we're more than, you're more than. I do, for the man who murdered John, and by Jesus, he's been called some names, and I just look at, wouldn't even touch it. But I do, when I see the impact on our children, and they're phenomenal, Alex. They're just, I'm like, they're my best teachers, and they have in them their dad, they have me, and they're their own individual human beings. And then I see the impact of that level of trauma at times, and the rage, I mean, the rage that comes up with me is just as it should be. But I do know that as John left this earth, and I got to tell him how much I loved him. The love in his eyes was just divine, and everything was quiet. I just could see in his eyes, and it was an eternal love. It just, like, literally, love was sitting as John left this earth. But I remember saying to him, you better look after us. You better look after us. You better find a way, because I know you gotta go. I know you gotta go. But I do for me see Connor and Amy, and you said earlier, Alex, I see a part, and I don't use the word resilience or strength, or this is way above all this. They talk to me sometimes. Yeah, there you go. And when I hear them go, but when they talk to me from this profound place where I go, I don't know, and they go, Ma'am, of course you can do it. Jesus Christ, what? How? These two young people, 18 and 21, I went back to an apartment to say, your father's been murdered. And here they are saying, Ma'am, it's okay, do it. And we help. John's dad said we're a great little unit. When one goes down, the other helps. And you know what we do? We don't touch. It's like if one of us is in the height of it, right? The last thing you want is someone explaining it to you or trying to fix it or tidy it. It's like, leave them alone. Leave them alone. They're just about managing to breathe at the moment and just be around the person, and do not decide that to interfere or contribute is of any bloody value. And I think that's the biggie. Until the person asks.
Yes. So much in psychology of what we've learned or been taught is that it's all about feelings and all about emotions, and we have to eliminate every bad emotion, every bad feeling in order to feel happy. Early on, my grandfather went the other way, and he criticized that very much. He said, it's not our job as psychiatrists or therapists or whatever to help people feel better. This is not what life is about, and it's not what a healthy person actually worries about, feel better, their own feelings. We are here to help people, strengthen people to and make them understand that they can go through the challenges of life, whatever they may be, and go through them and enable them to go through them without taking damage, go through them and deal with them and still make their lives count.
Yeah.
The moment we try to reduce everything down to feelings, as if that was a goal to feel happy, right? I'll do this and that, or you use this and that method, and that's going to make you feel better. My grandfather said, a healthy human being doesn't want to feel good. A healthy human being wants a reason to feel good. Now that's a huge difference.
It really
reasons
does.
exist objectively in the world. I can only be happy about something or about someone, but then I am in touch. Then I'm engaging with that meaningful task, that goal that's meaningful, something, an idea that's bigger than me, or that other person, and I'm fully with that activity or fully with that person. I'm actually not looking at myself. I'm overlooking myself in that moment.
I like that.
And the byproduct is oftentimes a feeling of happiness. When you are with a beloved person, you feel happy, but you're not intending it. It's not your intention to say, I want to feel happy, and therefore I'm going to be with that person. You know, that makes it a very selfish. You know, and your friends would feel that. It was, oh, yeah, I just invited you over because I want to not feel lonely. I want to feel happy, right? So you're here for me. Oh, probably they would say, okay, great, can we go now?
Good luck now. The
so
one
happiness, good feelings, they happen and they need to happen. They cannot be intended and even less kind of installed through some method or through a therapist. And therapists should not do their profession if they think that's what their goal is.
No, and I think exactly like you said, and you know, I've read your grandfather Viktor's book Man Search for Meaning many times, and I've been reading Elizabeth's. I'd love to share a little piece in a minute that really struck me. I've, as I say, a couple of the online, and looking forward to in the future being part of the new one. No pressure, but anyway, I'm only joking. No, there was something I was going to say there. No, it'll come back. I was caught in the course. But actually, when you were saying about Elizabeth, and I found a lovely interview on YouTube. And I've been reading her books, which are really beautiful. And again, you know, this isn't this. So for me, my connection with your grandfather, with yourself and the work, and obviously I have a whole background, a whole life of working in the world of therapy and tried different things. The one thing I always felt when I took on mental health and suicide, and I was adamant about having been in the psych and gone through many years of my own mental health, was that And I was part of challenging here in Ireland was that it was prescriptive and it was, we know what's best for you. So I would have pushed back on that a lot and just said, let the person drive their own recovery.
Well, and you said something valuable. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're okay.
Because your children are their own persons, and
totally.
The way they respond to the trauma, to the feelings that they will that sometimes come up. Everybody is perfectly capable of dealing with their feelings, with trauma, and especially if they had good examples.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the way they answer to that question of life, the way they respond, I'm sure there's something that can be learned from just sitting back and observing how they do it and how they choose to do it in their individual way. We're all individuals. No person is like the other. And that's why it's so sad that a lot of times the psychotherapy consists of this kind of checking the boxes. And you have situation A, here's what you do. It doesn't work that way. Humans are more complex. We're individuals. Thank God. And even the therapist is an individual, and every situation is unique and individual. So how are you going to apply some mechanistic, concept that's ready-made, and bring that into the therapy as pre-assembled? That doesn't work, and I think a lot of therapists have realized that.
Absolutely,
I see a trend in the recent years.
And one thing, and I know we're good. We have another sort of few minutes, and so something that really resonates with me, and your film production company is called, because a friend said to me today, how do you explain that word? And I really, because my experience with John, it's the more than in me, the noetic, and this is the bit I'd love if it's okay, Alex. It was that when something comes about, it's nearly when everything has shut down and the noise has stopped, and I'm like, I don't actually know what to do. And then this more than this, call it consciousness, call it life. For me, my relationship with John has got stronger. My demands are probably stronger now. It's like, right, need to talk to you. But and the devastation in that, but they're walking side by side, and John, being an acupuncturist, yin and yang, he was adamant about it. It must, they walk side by side, the what is and the desire for what could be or should be, and they're going to walk hand in hand in life. And he was adamant, and Taoism we would have been big into. There's always contradiction and duality. It's how we manage it. The piece that I related very much to with your grandfather's work was, and then yourself, around that noetic. Would you explain that? Because I think that's beautiful. Sure. Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, so if you think of every approach, every school of psychotherapy has a basic idea of how humans function ideally. And what makes up a healthy human being. And so then you can go in and explain what goes wrong and where you need to kind of look at to find the problem and to fix it. So I think for centuries all agreed that as human beings, we have bodies. We share that with plants. We share that with animals.
Yeah.
And then at some point, what was called the soul was kind of changed in more scientific terms to the psyche.
That's right.
But in doing so, a couple of things were lost, because the psyche kind of explains our intellectual capabilities, our intelligence, our IQ, our emotional makeups and wirings, and they're connected. They are very well studied. And that's the end of the story usually with any psychotherapy. Say, okay, there's your body and there's your psyche, and they're connected. And then you have what is it called? When you're not feeling right, your body will start to make problems, and when your body makes problems, your psyche, they go parallel. Usually, you feel bad, you're going to think negative thoughts, and so on. But that's not the whole story.
No.
And my grandfather said, you're missing out something. There's still a third dimension here, a third level.
Absolutely.
We prefer dimension because dimension, you can't take dimensions apart. They kind of are connected. You can't take a human being apart.
Yeah.
So, but you can call them levels if you like. So there's a third level. And in that, he put everything that was lost when sort of the word spirit was changed to psyche.
Yeah.
Your intentions, your interests, your creativity, your conscience,
yeah,
your intentionality for other people, which means love, human love, which is more than just sex and more than just liking a type. That will be in your psyche, right? Emotional high. What comes after that? Where you have the innate longing for meaning, to find some meaning in your existence, in life, in this universe, and about what you do with the time that you have. That's in that dimension, which he called the noetic dimension.
Yeah.
He used the word noos, which sort of means the mind, the spirit, but in a non-religious sense. And it was important for him to point out that he was not going into religion. He wasn't going back to the word a spirit. No. He appreciated that separation, body and the psyche, but then he said there is something more. It's a specifically human dimension where we also have, for example, the freedom to choose what we do with the conditions that we find around us, but also with the conditions that we find within us. And it's only the human being who can adopt an attitude even towards things that are happening, say, on the level of the psyche, in the psychological level. If I feel a lot of rage for whatever reason, because I don't know, I was born this way, there might be genetic influence, it might even go down to the physical level, or it might be that I was just confronted and I learned, model learning, the behaviorists, right? I was surrounded, my parents always solved problems by going at each other, right? So maybe I lack the skills, and that's just how my psyche has turned out. Well, but you still have freedom to say, okay, today I'm going to make it differently. I don't want to be that person anymore that just reacts. Behaviorists would say, well, it's all learned behavior, it's all action, reaction, stimulus and response, right? No, Frankl said there is a freedom. There's a third dimension. It's very important to keep that in mind. And every person, even if until now they have reacted, so to speak, parallel to what their body and their psyche demanded, right? Yeah. And they kind of waved it through and said, yeah, I feel aggressive, so I'm going to punch someone. Or whatever problem that psychologists love to analyze. The human being can always take a stand and say, today I'm going to do it differently. Free up there in this noetic image. In German, there are two words, geistig and geistlich, so it's separated, kind of religious and non-religious. But even religious feelings, even the religiosity, that is something that's more than a drive and an instinct. And it's more, if it's real, it's more than just copied behavior, right? Totally. Not everybody who has parents who believe becomes a believer. So, right? People become atheists for whatever reasons, and it's their right. But it's in that dimension that we have religious feelings too, religious values, and logotherapy. So my grandfather's approach was first and is perhaps still the only one who says, no, that you can't take that away from people. It's their right. It's part of being human, and you have to respect that. And when a person brings in, say, their religious values and feelings, you work with that. You respect that because it's not the job of a psychiatrist to judge or to say this religious God doesn't exist, so I'm not going to do therapy. That's the job of a priest, maybe, but not of a therapist. So we have to resort to that level of understanding what makes us human, and to accept the reality that religious feelings and love for God or the universe or whatever someone wants to call it is real and is important and is of value and makes us human. Freud would have said that's a neurosis. Away with that. Everybody who believes in God is a neurotic. We don't do that.
No, definitely not. How are we doing? I know we're coming up to actually the time is just I could sit all night talking to you, Alex. How are we doing? How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, it's been an hour, so
yeah, and I'm hoping you pop back in from time to time. Will be absolutely wonderful.
it would be my pleasure.
And you know, it just one of the things John would have had, and like I have as well, but he would have been very adamant to bear witness. And when you'd say bear witness, it's that it's not that you have to do anything, but have the capacity to bear witness to someone else. And that's what you do and have done here tonight for me. You've bear witness to me as a full human being without trying to touch or maneuver. It was just so genuine and so loving and you know, just one human being to another. And I think that's such a gift. And I think a lot of people have it, and more people are understanding that actually. And I actually, it's one of the things Connor and Amy in particular will go, Mom, I'm going to talk. Please say nothing. Please don't interrupt and don't contribute in any way to the conversation. And, you know, she's teaching me. It's like, you know, she just wants you to bear witness. So I'm very grateful. I'm really, you know, I reached out to you and you came back straight away. And out of that, over the last 18 months, and alongside what my life, how it's evolving and emerging, and you know, it can be absolutely horrific at times. It can be, there aren't words, and you know that, so I just don't go looking for them. But it's such a beautiful, and I know I'm to be on this journey with yourself and others. There's one, if it's okay, you said about Elizabeth, who was your grandfather's one of the first students, would it be? Have I got that correct?
Maybe not the first, but certainly the
very early.
Yes.
So this, if it's okay, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I was reading Elizabeth's book, and then I found the interview. And just at the end, the guy said, you know, was there in the 50 years or how long, you know, Elizabeth, he said, I can't remember the exact, I might get that wrong, but you could help me. But was there something particularly that stood out? And she shared this, and I was like, wow. And she said she was so touched deeply by it. She said there was two innocent brothers in a concentration camp, trapped waiting for their own death to come. And they said, what would they do if they somehow could get away? And the first said they would tell the world about the gruesomeness of what had happened and start a movement of hateful resistance. This was the play your grandfather had wrote, and Elizabeth was sharing it. And the other brother said, and if I get this wrong, just help me out. No, you can't do that. We cannot fight hate with hate. We must not fight violence with violence. This chain has to be broken. And it can only, and this I just thought was, wow, it can only be broken by someone who has received hate or violence, but does not pass it on. Someone who will hold it out and not pass it on. Someone who can take it, withstand it, and break the chain. Someone like that will contribute to peace for everyone. If we repay like with like over and over again, then we will never come to peace. There is so much misery in the world, and if we give misery in return, then the misery continues. The chain must be broken. I was just like, I was just deeply touched by that when Elizabeth shared that. And that came from your grandfather.
Yeah, it's a powerful little play that he wrote, and you'll find a lot of those ideas in there that sometimes you wonder how someone is capable of being in the midst of this injustice and deciding it's not gonna change me into, I will not allow it to become a vengeful person who will sooner or later do injustice to others. The concept of revenge seldomly gets to a good place. Yeah.
Yeah, I just
But
wanted to.
we all can make that choice, and I
Yeah,
see you
yeah.
doing it, and that's why you're understanding. That's why you
I was deeply
feel.
touched.
That's
And
why
Lisa,
his words resonate with you,
yeah,
because
oh, hugely, hugely, yeah. And just thank you to Elizabeth sharing that, because she was so deeply touched by them. So I will say goodbye for now. I can see Alex going, God, you won't leave me alone. And no, I look forward to us talking again. And thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed chatting with you,
I always
Alex.
enjoy talking with you.
Oh, now make sure I have to get this right, otherwise Connor gives out to me. Hold on a second.